Right, got a lot to get through today, so let's knuckle down. I was making a comedy video yesterday on Operation Hummingbird, and I unfortunately had to watch most of the documentary in order to actually make it, and I was enraged at a couple of things. Let me go to my notes. Okay, I mean, bearing in mind Cheshire Police have put this video out. They uploaded it July the 5th 2024. I'm surprised they haven't been taken down for misinformation or whatever, and no one's pulled them up on it.
And here of multiple child, baby, infant deaths. They are extremely rare. One is...
Okay. Well, we know for a fact that the Countess of Chester was not on a national scale. Was the number of deaths wasn't an outlier. So that's one thing. Okay, 6/16.
Case or a non-suspicious case.
What we found out was in neonatal infants, it's very clear that they know when a baby's going to collapse and die, and parents are already prepared for that. And that neonatal units, which my expectation was that it's full of sick babies that could die at any moment, it's actually not.
That's interesting. Even Paul Hughes' expectation was it's full of sick babies. They could die at any moment. No, that's even he knew.
So they explained that these babies do not die. So if a baby collapses, it's usually expected, and even on the outside chance of it being unexpected, it's always explainable.
I don't know, who's this they? And he can't be talking about the hospital, because I've got this document from the Thirlwall inquiry, which I found from one of my own videos, from Nim Subhedar, who is his official title, consultant neonatologist at Liverpool Women's Hospital, honorary clinical lecturer at the University of Liverpool, and clinical lead Cheshire and Mersey Neonatal Network. Okay. And Nim has said unexpected collapse. This is back in 2016. So I don't know who Paul Hughes was talking to, who this they is. Unexpected collapse without a clear cause is well recognised in neonatal units, and we've had a couple of case at Liverpool Women's Hospital recently. So I don't know where he's got that from. Alright, and then the other thing that annoyed me, bigly. Okay, they're talking about Lucy's third arrest.
I slept a lot the night before. I remember getting up very early, 3 o'clock in the morning. We met at Laken and we drove down. It's an hour and a half, 2 hours, even at that time in the morning. Gave me a lot of time to ruminate and think about what could go wrong. I do remember having a great relief when we knocked on the door. Mr. Letby opened the door, and it was all very low key, obviously.
Low key.
Despite the severity of this investigation, it's not a suspect that posed a great deal of risk to us as police.
Oh, not a suspect that posed a great deal of risk to us.
Officers, so it was a very low key arrest, a gentle knock on the door. We went in, we explained why we were there. They knew because they'd been through it twice before.
Been through it twice before.
Miss Letby's mum was very distressed, and But Miss Letby herself, she complied
She complied.
and was very subdued.
She was very subdued. So, why the handcuffs? I actually had a look to see if Cheshire Constabulary had their own, what do they call it, like instructions for use of handcuffs, but they don't, because I was looking at another freedom of information request that someone put out to them. Obviously they were unhappy about the way they got handcuffed, and the Cheshire Constabulary's response was, we don't have our own specific guidelines, but here's the national ones that we're giving out through ACPO. So, points to consider. The application of handcuffs is clearly based on the officer's perception of the person to be handcuffed at the time. In the circumstances, whilst taking into account all the facts, it must be proportionate and lawful where each officer is accountable both in law and procedure. Use of handcuffs. Justification is achieved through establishing not only a legal right to use handcuffs, but also good objective grounds for doing so. And I don't believe throughout this document there was anything about theatre being a good enough reason. Officers should be familiar and comfortable with the circumstances in which handcuffs may be used. Moreover, they should be able to justify the use to supervisory officers and appropriate authorities, including the courts. In the same way, officers should be prepared to justify the period of time the handcuffs were applied before their eventual removal. In consideration what action is reasonable, an officer should apply the principles of the conflict management model. I mean, does any of this sound like reasonable? You know, these should have been used on Lucy, given the fact that he said she was she complied, low risk and subdued. Especially the impact factors such as age, gender, respective size and apparent strength and fitness, which did look pretty strong, may or may not support the justification of using handcuffs. And it goes on about if you suspect violence, if you suspect they're going to escape. None of that is applicable to Lucy. So they've just shot themselves in the foot there. What else did I want to go through? Okay, the Sun done a little story the other day. I actually tried recording a video, just going through this blow by blow, but let me just read the title. I defend killers like Lucy Letby. Shock new theory could free her, but I know the truth and medical evidence doesn't matter. I did start reading through it, but my reading skills are pretty poor and it took me about an hour to go through the whole article, only because I kept stopping and then questioning things, and it was just really, really long and repetitive. So I'll just go through some things I want to raise. Basically, there's nothing in here that we haven't heard before. The TLDR, too long didn't read, and I've read it for you. It's all about the notes. The I'm evil notes, basically. That was their main justification. Okay, so Where did I get to? Right, I'm just going to go through some highlights. She was, well, she was also convicted of attempting to murder 9 more infants. Attempted murder of 9 infants. I don't think that figure's right. Isn't it 7 or 8? I've never seen 9. It says here, the Court of Appeal has previously dismissed 2 appeals for lack of new evidence. Well, no, she's not been granted leave to appeal. She didn't get to the appeal court and then they dismissed it. She wasn't given the right to appeal. I mean, that's quite a common one. I'll let them off that one. Something of interest here, actually. There was various evidence of, at the very least, extremely odd behaviours, very specific behaviours, perhaps even on occasion ghoulish behaviours, ghoul and misfit, that were reported by witnesses and present in some of the actions of Lucy Letby. He referred to the materials obtained from her home, including her diary being marked with victims' initials on. For example, their dates of death and when conditions worsened. I haven't really seen that. I don't know. Well, they briefly showed a picture of the diary in that Operation Hummingbird video, but what I saw was here it had like LD. Were all the babies' initials LD? Were they all called the same name? I thought that's a bit strange. Like, I've heard someone say LD just means long day, but because you can't see all of the pages, and then there's another. This is a different page for sure, and it's got LD, 4 LDs on that, and that's a different page. So what was every single baby she killed, or sorry, not killed, or alleged to have killed, convicted of killing, were they all called LD? I'm gonna have to dispute. I haven't seen this. What they're saying there in the sum, being marked with victims' initials on. I haven't actually seen that. So, well, if it's true, I mean, she might have done it just as a way of remembering, like to send a sympathy card or something, or just for a mental note. But like I say, I haven't, because all the pictures of her diary, the only initials on it is LD, and it's on almost every page, and you can't see the rest of it. I'm gonna have to say I don't actually, I can't comment where LD 1, 2, so yeah, 1, 2, 3 there, but the other page was definitely a different page there with the salsa down there. That's and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 of them were called LD. One of them was called Extra LD, Extra Long Day, LD Turns or something. Yeah, I don't know about that. I'm really gonna question that. Yeah, then they go on to the whole, each example not going to be enough to get a conviction, he continued. there's a point at which they all mount up and the jury can make their own conclusions. They can infer guilt. Okay. As evidence as a whole. Like I said, the article got really long. But there was this sub article enclosed in it by Holly Christodoulou, the digital court editor, and the title is "I covered Lucy Letby case from her first arrest. Here's why I know she's guilty," and the first two columns are yada yada yada, and then it basically is talking about the note. It's all about the note, the I'm evil note, which for the 10th time, it wasn't a confession. It was written after she had been arrested, and she wrote on the note, "I'm innocent," and she wrote it to me. It read like that's what they were saying about her. In her police interview, they said, "What does this mean?" She said, "That's what they're saying about me, that I'm evil, I did this." So that's it. Not even worth bagging and tagging. Right. But there's something interesting in this sub-article here. And it said, the jury certainly didn't forget Letby's confession when they made their decision. Confession. So they're obviously taking this note as a confession, even now, even on whenever this was written, 3 days ago or whatever. Nor did the top judges who twice refused when her team applied for permission to appeal. So they've got the bit right about refusing permission to appeal this time, but they're saying the reason the judges refused permission to appeal was because she confessed, when I don't think that's the case. I think the case was they actually agreed that JRM's testimony was questionable, and they agreed with a lot that the defence was saying, but they just couldn't legally submit it because it didn't count as new evidence in their mind, when actually of course it was. Then what else of interest was there? They started to go into something called post-trial evidence, which is interesting. Right. As well as a raft of circumstantial evidence against Letby heard in court, which is not, they don't tell us what it is. They don't tell us any more about what this circumstantial evidence is. Even though the article's really long, and rather than keep repeating everything they were saying before about the notes, they could have told us what some of this circumstantial evidence is. Other information has come to light since her conviction. Right. The Thirlwell, spelt wrong, Thirlwell, public inquiry into Letby's crimes has heard disturbing evidence of the nurse potentially tampering with babies' breathing tubes while on 2 work placements at Liverpool Women's Hospital. Well, this got disproved. Richard Baker Casey, representing the families of 12 babies, said that during her time at Liverpool Women's Hospital, babies had collapsed, blah blah. Yeah, wow, that got disproved. And then look at this evidence seen by BBC's Panorama. This is the Judith Moritz fail. Also show blood tests from a 3rd baby. Okay, bearing in mind, right, this article was written after Dr. Shuley's panel, where they talked about the reasons for the low peptide results in the blood test. Panorama also showed a blood test from a 3rd baby. So this is a baby not on any of the indictments, being cared for by Letby at Chester in November 2015, also recorded very high levels of insulin and low levels of C-peptide. Tests later revealed the baby had congenital I made a mockery out of this before. Congenital hyperinsulinism, a condition where the body naturally produces too much insulin. And I was basically saying, so before she had diagnosed that the baby had hyperinsulinism, the exact method that she was going to use to kill it was going to be its very weakness, the very thing that it was a joke. It's just too ridiculous to even go into. But 4 experts said that CHI could not explain such an exceptionally high insulin reading for the infant. And they put this out after the Dr. Shuley conference about explaining the insulin results. Anything else? There we go on about the notes, post-it notes. And the nurse had returned to work that day after a week's holiday to Ibiza with 2 friends. Letby messaged a colleague saying she would probably be back with a bang, lol. Guilty. The nurse, who had special training for ICU babies, showed an unusual interest in searching for her victims' families on social media. I mentioned that before. They're always going on about her Facebook searches. So we've got here, there was a total of all of the families in the indictments. She searched 31 times, and she searched for other people 2,287 times. So 31 divided by 2287 equals times 100. So 1.35% of her searches were of people related to the. Well, it's nothing. It's literally nothing. And I think I saw. Here we go. That was it. How is it so easy to suddenly overlook these cold hard facts? Letby was obsessed with the families of her victims. 1%. An innocent person does not stalk. She stalked them. I mean, I've heard one figure where she looked up the mother of the baby of one of the parents once, which was like a year later. But that's stalked. Bearing in mind, let me just say something about Facebook, and I'm pretty sure it was the case too back in 2015. If you're going to put something on Facebook, I'll have to double check it later when they change their privacy policy, but at some point they did change it so that by default members of the public cannot view any of the posts. It's done on a permissions basis. So anything you put out there, you would normally have to set it as public, viewable to. You would have to deliberately set it as viewable to the public. So, I mean, if she had access otherwise, in other words, if she was a Facebook friend of the mother or something, which I'm sure is common, then permission is granted for them to. That is what Facebook is for. People are putting stuff on Facebook, and people are setting stuff. if they're not friends and it's accessible to the public, they're putting it as accessible to the public because they want everyone to see it. So I don't understand this Facebook stalking malarkey, because anything that anyone posts, you can set the permissions as to who can see it. Even I'm sure back in 2015, I'll have to double check later. In fact, well, let's ask DeepSeek. If it works, did Facebook set profiles to non-public by default? If it works, it often doesn't work. I'll leave that running. What else have I got? Okay, a couple more articles. We've got there's an article by The Guardian. Nina Modi. I was part of the panel that reviewed the Lucy Letby case. I believe the trial was fundamentally flawed. Obviously, after seeing the results, and Professor Nina Modi, who is Professor of Neonatal Medicine at Imperial College London. So I mean, we could take her opinion, or bearing in mind also she's probably only doing it because she's like all the rest of us, white middle-aged men, just wanting to subscribe to Lucy Letby's OnlyFans. We could listen to that, but something better. Look at this. Does new evidence really prove Lucy Letby is innocent? Liz Hull sat through both her trials. This is a damning verdict. I wonder what Liz Hull is going to have to say about it. And she goes on to embarrass herself with the whole everything that was brought up in the panel was already discussed at the trial, trying to salvage her podcasting award and her career from being flushed away. Yeah, it's terrible. I did have a brief read of it, but I have to say there was nothing different from what she posted in the what she said in her podcast. Actually, again, someone made a really good comment, and it was about find. Oh, come on. About the post-mortems. Basically, she was saying that air embolus wouldn't show up in the post-mortem. And then someone commented saying, well, if it didn't, if you're never going to find evidence of air embolus in a post-mortem, how can you prove that it did happen if you can't disprove it? But yeah, I think I've done enough today. Okay.